How you doing, Oscar?
I'm doing well. How's things with you?
We're good. We're good. Yeah, we're it's good times. Everything's good. We've got podcasts are good, football's good, conference Friday.
3 days away.
3 days away. Yeah. We're in a bull market. Makes things a bit easier in some ways.
It definitely does, yeah.
Does it change your business a lot?
Yeah, it really helps with our promotions business. So a lot of companies in the Bitcoin space will sponsor our earnings rewards, and it makes that a lot easier in terms of getting those sales through the door.
What does that mean? What's your earnings reward?
So on Fountain, you can earn sats every day just by listening to podcasts. And it's kind of like a lottery. So every day you'll have a random earning rate. Some days you will earn, some days you won't. And so every day, all of the Fountain users are checking their earning rate. And companies can sponsor that. So when you go to check your earnings rate, you can see, okay, this is brought to you by whatever company, and then people can click through and view the company. And that works really well for the advertising partners.
So confession, I absolutely have not spent enough time on Fountain, learning about Fountain, getting into Fountain, understand your business, complete confession. But interestingly, me and Danny were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. I was like, Danny's like, Pete, we've got to get the Fountain guys on. I was like, yeah, cool, but I just haven't spent any time looking. He's like, have you looked at what you've earned? I was like, no. And so this was quite cool, actually. Let's get it open. We couldn't find my login at first. that was the thing. And so I just not paid much attention to it. What's our split?
It's just equal between, I think there's 5 of us on it and open sats.
Right. So I'd assumed I'd got a handful. You know, there's a lot of these things where you get some sats sent to you, and like some of the gaming platforms, it's like, yeah, play this game and you get 10 sats. I'm like, really? Because like, how many times I've got to play it to make anything? And so I assume maybe there'll be a few thousand sats. I've got 1.6 million sats, which means we've essentially done about 8 million sats between.
Yeah, maybe it's 4 plus open sats, actually. Maybe it's 5 totals in the splits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
But what is that? What do the math on? Because I can never do sats to
8 million
pounds.
sats is...
Well, 10 million sats is about 7,000.
I just can't do
right?
maths, I know.
What's that, about 5,800?
Something like that.
Yeah.
More maybe.
I mean, that's a significant amount of money, right?
Yeah, it's a significant amount, and it could be significantly higher, because the critical piece in this whole value for value ethos, which I know you've had Adam Curry on to talk about before, the critical piece is the ask. So I think,
Yeah, that's without us really doing anything
exactly
to push it or to
We've
engage
not
with
pushed.
Yeah. The ask is so important because, people really value your content and podcast content in general. It really, changes people's lives in many ways. They learn about new perspectives on life, and they really value this content. And so if you're able to ask at the end of the episode, it's difficult to fit it into your existing format. I think that's the challenge for podcasters that have an established show. But if you can fit that ask into the show format, then I think you'd see that go up.
Hold on, what do you mean by the ask? Ask them to listen to it on Fountain?
Ask them to support you on Fountain.
What does that mean?
So we did it once. I had a call with Nick when we were in New York, and we were like, we're going to put it in every outro. We did it once and never did it again. So we need to get back to that.
But what does support us in Fountain mean? Bear in mind, I've not spent any time on Fountain. I know that sounds bad, but I haven't.
Yeah, let me give you just a high level overview of how it works. So Fountain is like any other podcast app, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We have all of the normal features that you'd expect. The key differentiator is that you can support your favorite podcasts in kind of exactly the same way as you might do on Patreon. But the difference is it's integrated into the actual listening experience. So you don't have to leave the app that you're listening in and go somewhere else and then, figure out the login on a different platform. You can just hear something that you find fascinating and then instantly from the player or from the episode page, send some sats along with a message to the podcaster. You can also stream sats every minute that you're listening, which interestingly is a significant volume or a significant percentage of our payment volume. I actually think that's one of the more exciting parts of what we're doing, although it's still quite hidden for a lot of users. So that's the way it works. And then there's a whole discovery piece off the back of that, whereby we have a social graph in the app. So all of the people that I'm following, when I see them send a boost, which is a payment with a message to a podcaster, I can see what the episode was, what they said about the episode, and also the actual Satoshi value of the boost. And that's a signal to me that that episode was worth listening to. So that's at a high level, what Fountain does and how it works. In terms of the ask, that's just how you as a content creator ask your audience to give value back, because, you put your content out for free. Yes, you make money from advertising, but you put that content out, it's freely available. And when we talk about the value for value ask, it's just about how do you frame your request to your audience and say, hey guys, how much is this content worth to you? Do you find it valuable? If you do, send me some value back. You don't have to do it every episode. You don't have to do it, every month even. But if you hear something that really connects with how you're feeling and you really value that content, let me know. So it's kind of similar to leave me a review or a rating or share your thoughts on social media. But there's a payment attached to that message, which means that, number one, you get paid and it's an ancillary monetization method for you. But number two, and the thing that we're most excited about, is the discovery signal it provides. And this kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier around how the traditional social media platforms use an attention signal to rank and surface content. Whereas on Fountain, we use the value signal in the form of Satoshis. And I think what's most interesting about this going forward is that an attention signal is it's flat, essentially. So if you like an episode or a video on YouTube and I like an episode on YouTube, the signal's the same from the perspective of the YouTube algorithm, whereas you might have just slightly liked that video, it might have been slightly interesting, whereas it could have changed my life or unlocked something really new for me in terms of how I see the world. And by using a dynamic value signal, you can kind of capture that extra, that value, and you can use that to surface the content. So yeah, that's a high level how it works, but the ask is really important. It's great to see that you've earned 8 million sats, but I think, the more people ask, the more people will support.
So I wasn't just being rude and playing on my phone. I was on the app. I was trying to import from Spotify. I couldn't log into Spotify. But I'm having a look here and I'm just seeing most of it appears to be the streaming of sats. Okay, is that, do you get that natively? Does it just happen? Every time someone's streaming, you're streaming sats and you have that built into your economic model to just provide that?
Yeah, so the way the streaming sats work is voluntary. All the payments from the listener perspective are voluntary. So you don't have to stream sats to the podcaster. You don't have to send them any money, but you have an option directly from the player to turn that on. So you could choose to stream 50 sats per minute. That's my kind of normal amount. And it ranges anywhere from 10 sats per minute to some people send 1,000 sats per minute for the shows they really like. So that's all optional. And then from the podcaster side, you have to enable this in your RSS feed, or Fountain provides a kind of bridge to that with our podcaster wallet, which is how you guys receive your sats into your Fountain wallet.
Yeah, so I'm seeing the stream, and then I'm seeing the odd boost here or there. That's interesting that we've done that without doing any work.
Yeah.
But I don't fully understand the economic model, because there isn't a subscription, right? Whereas like Spotify pay a subscription.
Yeah.
So it's all voluntary.
It's all voluntary, exactly. And I think another interesting thing that we've seen over the past kind of 10, 20 years in the media landscape is this concept of subscription hell. We all have our Netflix subscription, our Apple TV subscription. Maybe you buy a new subscription just to watch one show, and then you have to kind of unsubscribe and go back to it.
You have to phone them up to cancel.
Yeah, exactly. All of these dark patterns. Another idea behind what we're doing and the concept of value for value is that you don't have to pay a subscription. You only pay when you find content that is really valuable to you. And that kind of fits really well with the podcasting medium as well. Because if you think about the way we listen to podcasts, we don't necessarily listen to every episode, even for our favorite shows. We kind of dip in and out, and we find certain episodes way more valuable than kind of the general day-to-day of a show that we follow.
Or even an entire episode. Like you see the drop-off, and it's like most people listen to the first 20 minutes, and then drop-off is pretty steep.
Yeah, exactly. And the other cool thing that you can see, and we're still only scratching the surface of what we can provide here in terms of data, but because people are streaming sats per minute, you can actually see in the data, okay, people dropped off at this exact point, or they sent a boost at this exact point when the topic of conversation, was on that. So there's also a lot of data that we can pull out from these payments.
There's certain subscriptions I'm never going to get rid of in my life, right? Spotify I will have till I die, because all my music is in one place. But until someone does a better job. My Sky Sports is never going to go because I watch 5 to 10 football matches a week. My private healthcare is a subscription that's never going to go because health is really important, obviously. But there's not many beyond that. There's lots we're drifting out. Like Netflix recently, I've been like, well, every time I go on, there's nothing to watch. There's nothing new that's interesting. That could go, Apple could go. There's lots that could go, but there's like 3 or 4 that definitely aren't going to go. I switched my podcasting to Spotify from Apple, so I don't really use Apple anymore. So I've got it all in one place. I think it would be really interesting if you guys took on Spotify. I think if you got into that space, you might not want to go into subscriptions, but I would happily switch subscription to another service which is better than the Spotify and has all the same music. If you had the entire library, but it was a better model for, say, the artists, where they got a better percentage, that I would be into it.
Yeah, so we actually do support music in Fountain at a basic kind of initial level. We don't have the full catalog, but we hope to one day. One of the other interesting things that's happening in the podcasting 2.0 space, which is the kind of initiative that Adam Curry and Dave Jones set up to push podcasting forward, is there's this thing called the medium tag, which you can set to be, the default is podcast, but you can set it to be music. And this means that artists can upload their albums and their singles to RSS feeds, and the content's available in podcasting 2.0 apps like Fountain. So we do have about maybe like 5,000, 10,000 songs in the Fountain app today that you can listen to. You can add to your library, you can build playlists, all of the normal features like Spotify, but the value for value model works in the same way. So you can stream sats for every minute that you listen to the song. You can send a boost, and all of the discovery features work in the same way. We also have something that has never been done before, which is music podcasts. So podcasters for many, many years have wanted to play music in their shows. They've wanted to create music podcasts where they talk about the artist, they talk about the history, and they play the songs. Well, that's not really been possible because of the way rights management works in the music industry. These artists that are uploading their content to RSS feeds make it open, freely available, just like podcasting. And so there's about 30 music podcasts now where the host will talk about the music, play the music. But at the moment,
it's like a radio show, really.
Like a radio show, exactly, but async, like a podcast, so you can come back to it whenever. And the way it works, which is really cool, is when the song is playing, the wallet destination switches. So it will switch from the podcast host over to the artist, and all of those sats will go there. So yeah, we've got a lot more plans for music, but obviously there's a long way to go until we can get that full catalog.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's really interesting what you're doing. It's like stealing those bits of market share. I kind of think maybe you're in that position at the moment. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but if you look at like Nostar, it's really cool, but it's really for Bitcoiners. And what you've got is really for Bitcoiners. Have you had any luck does your app orange pill people into Bitcoin? 100%
it does. One of the most interesting things about, seeing how people use Fountain over the past couple of years is we have so many people that have purchased their first Bitcoin purely to load up their Fountain wallet and send that Bitcoin to podcasters. And
can they do that from within Fountain?
They can, yeah. You can buy with a bank card within the Fountain app. It's still not great though, because our partner, makes you do a KYC process, which is ridiculous. You don't want to do KYC to send $20 to a podcaster. This is changing, and we're hoping by the end of the year that we can have a flow where you can basically just top up your wallet with Apple Pay directly from the app, at small amounts. So the onboarding for us has been a big challenge, especially when you have someone that's new to Bitcoin. And also, if you're purchasing Bitcoin as a long-term store of value, you feel more comfortable, doing that on an exchange and going through the KYC process because it feels like a banking transaction. Whereas if you're just, sending $5, $10, that KYC is a big blocker. But yeah, people, have purchased their first Bitcoin on Fountain. We also have a quite significant number of podcasts that have nothing to do with Bitcoin and are using Fountain purely for, what it does. And they don't even think of, they think of sats as like podcasting money. They don't even think of it as Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. So yeah, we're definitely onboarding people to Bitcoin. I think the challenge is, for those new users that are maybe hesitant about Bitcoin for whatever reason, they've seen some article in the media. It's crypto, what is this? But I think the good thing is, it's not just Fountain trying to push that forward. You have, the likes of Cash App and Strike, which are kind of helping us with that onboarding journey. It's still hard in the UK. It's way easier in the US. You have Strike and stuff. But here in the UK, there's not that many options in terms of onboarding to Lightning.
Is our Fountain show without ads?
No, it's like just ripped from the RSS feed. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's one of those things like if you stream sats, you get the show without ads.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we've thought about doing, and we definitely could do. I think right now we're trying to just make things as simple as possible for the podcaster, and also take away the dependency on the RSS feed. Because for you guys to do that, you'd need to, create the alternate audio file.
So we already do this for Patreon.
Okay.
So it's a really interesting thing because a lot of people moan about ads. Like, I hate your ads, or I hate your advertisers. Like, they people just want stuff for free. It's like this privileged position people have come from, but the sponsors pay for us to do this. And we had a thing previously where we did a subscription. You pay us in Bitcoin. We've got 12. So that it's not going to pay to run the show. And then we've tried.
Wait, what was that?
Was
that like a long time ago? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Remember we used to send them an email and they could, they'd get a version and
it didn't really work though, did it?
12 people. So it was $60 for a year to have no ads. So we made $720. Just you can't run the show on that. We've tried it with Patreon. We've got a bit more. I think we peaked. We've got maybe $1,000 a month. But again, it's a show that's got 7 people to work on it. I think yours is probably the best secondary income that we've seen. And I do wonder if people could stream sats and get a version without the ads. That is something that might incentivize it. Because they're paying twice at the moment, because they're paying to stream us the sats and they're having to listen to the ads.
The thing that's tricky that I don't know about that though, because we have a ad-free RSS feed on Patreon, but if you put it into Fountain, people could still have it without paying. Because they can listen without paying. So I don't know how you would decide who got the ad-free version and who didn't.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things here. I think that we could definitely do this for you guys and set this up. And I don't know if you've heard about the L402 payment protocol, which is basically where you can gate content behind a Lightning payment. So we could definitely set that up for you so that the ad-free version of the audio is in the feed, but you can only listen to it and access the actual audio if you stream a certain amount of sats.
That'd be cool.
I think we'll definitely get there at some point, but I think for us, value for value on its own is something that we believe in strongly enough that we think that will work in and of itself. So for example, even if people don't enjoy listening to the ads, they love your content so much that they'd be willing to pay you on top of listening to those ads. And I think that's what we're really focused on. If you look at the top shows being supported on Fountain, they've really nailed the segment where they, ask for support, but also acknowledge the support. So things like reading out the top boost from the last 30 days, something like that. I think that's the key to maximizing the support level.
That's what like RHR do that. They read about every week. The thing that's tricky for us about that is the way we record, because we record like 15 shows in a sprint and then release them over the next month or whatever.
If we had our own studio.
Yeah, and you're doing it, every show was going out.
Yeah, but as a business model for us, it's very cool to get these additional stats. Actually, I think what the coolest part about it is it's Emma who works for us, right? She kind of runs the football club. You'll meet her when you come down. She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. She started out as like our assistant, and she would like book our meetings and our travel, and she's just so good. We've just elevated her. I've never got her to get into Bitcoin. I've tried. I offered to pay her a Christmas bonus in Bitcoin. She never took it. She's aware of this, but she probably doesn't realize she's got $1,000.
Well, I helped her set it up whenever we did it a while ago. And yeah, she'll have no clue. I bet she's never looked at the app since. I'll show her when we get back.
She won't know how to use it, and she'll have it. Yeah. What we should get her to do is transfer it to a wallet and not spend it.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. So for us as a business model, it's negligible to the turnover of the podcast. Yeah, with the team, you can imagine our costs with a team of 6 people and flying around the world. It's an expensive beast to run, but a really nice thing for the staff to get. How long have we had it? A couple of years?
Not even that long, probably, since we've had it properly set up. It's been on there for ages, but we did the splits maybe 8-9 months ago, a year.
Oh wow! So I mean, that's a really nice additional 1,000 for all the people who've done it. The bit that we sent to OpenStats, so it's really cool in that one as an incentive for us to push it and spend time. It doesn't exist. That doesn't mean it's not good, but I think what you're solving, it's a bit like that thing we listened to on the way, the Patreon guy.
Nick and Oscar sent that over.
Yeah, that video sent, by the way, amazing. We should put that in the show notes. What an incredible video. I've got my issues with Patreon, but that was very, very cool. But it's a bit like that. Actually, I think you're solving a bigger problem for the people starting out. Yeah, I remember when I first started the podcast. I mean, I didn't get a sponsor for 18 months. I don't know if I made any money. I don't know what I did. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But there was no money to be made. Whereas you can go into your platform and immediately start generating an income. And I think the good thing about that is, I don't know if you know about the whole something like. I'm making this number up, but there's a stat like 75% of podcasts don't get past like 5 episodes. People give up. And I think they give up because it's hard work. But I think just initially seeing that income, it's an incentive to keep going.
Exactly. And one of the things that I think I've heard so many times speaking to podcasters, especially ones that are just getting started, is it can be just one message from a listener that kind of pushes you past that 2nd or 3rd episode when you're not sure whether to continue. Could be a review, it could be an email, just something to keep you going. And the fact that we make that easier by enabling the comment and the payment directly from the player, I think that can really help people keep going. And it definitely works in terms of the monetary value. It works better for smaller podcasters. But I actually think you can think about what we're doing from the perspective of this is just an income stream. But I actually think the more valuable aspect is the discovery, because most people that listen to podcasts will have 30 or 40 different shows that they follow in their app. And that means that you might be getting 10 hours of new episode content a day in your podcast feed. And so there's a decision to be made about what do I listen to? And seeing people send those messages and send those payments is a great signal that content is worth listening to, especially if it comes from someone that you follow. So for example, if I see someone that I follow on Twitter share an episode link with a little comment saying, this episode was worth listening to, that provides one level of signal. But if that message is attached to a payment and it's a lot higher than the average payment, maybe it's 50,000 sats, 100,000 sats, 150,000, that's a really strong signal that that episode is worth listening to.
How do I see that?
So you see that in your home feed on Fountain. If you're not following that many people, then you might not see too many.
But no, I'm seeing stuff. I see I see, okay, yeah, like 55,000 sats, 52,000, 75,000 sats, 55,000. So there's some 97,000, 100K. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I see 111K.
Yeah, and it's those boosts that provide the signal that that content's worth listening to. And whether it's small podcasters or bigger podcasters on Fountain, you know, they see the value in the discovery as much as the monetization, because they can see it happening in the feed where, you know, a lot of people will boost an episode and a lot more people that don't even follow the show will see that, listen to it, and the numbers will go up. So
the boost drives the feed.
Yeah, exactly.
Can that be gamed, do you think?
It can be gamed to a certain extent, but because it's tied to the follower graph, then it can't. So if somebody starts sending a lot of boosts to an episode and you don't follow them, then you're not going to see it in your feed. So the key is that it's tied to your social graph as well.
So, and I guess the interesting part of that is, again, referring back to this this Patreon presentation, I really think everyone listening should watch. We should talk about that as well. But is that there was that really interesting part of the presentation when he talked about Beyond Web 2 and the death of the follower, because the social platforms made these changes that suited them. Everything changed to the economic benefit of the social platform. But this is actually driven by the economic benefit to the creator.
Exactly.
Which is a complete shift.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe I'll just kind of summarize what Jack Conte from Patreon was saying in that video. And yeah, would definitely encourage everyone to go and watch the full video because it provides a lot more context. But essentially what he was saying is that over the past 25 years of social media on the internet, we kind of started in the 2000s with the concept of a follower or a subscriber. And this allowed you to, you know, find your favorite content creators, follow them, and see their content when they posted new content. And then starting in kind of the 2010s, we started to move to more of a ranked model where the social platforms wouldn't give you just a chronological list of content from the people you follow, but they would start to do ranking based on attention signals. And what this...
To keep you in the platform.
To keep you in the platform, exactly. So, you know, they're optimizing time spent in the app, you know, all of the normal engagement metrics. And so they're going to prioritize whether it's podcast episodes or YouTube videos or Twitter posts, they're going to prioritize that content that keeps you engaged. And so if for whatever reason your latest episode or post doesn't deliver on that attention metric, then they're going to kind of downrank you in the feed. So that was what started to happen in 2010s. And that made it harder for content creators to get reach. And then
it also shifts the content they make because you may not be making it for your audience, you'll be making it for the algorithm instead.
Exactly. And you see this on YouTube. I mean, you go to YouTube and you see so many videos that have clickbait headlines, crazy shocked faces on the thumbnail.
Bitcoin's going to 50K.
Exactly.
Bitcoin's going to crash.
And also, you know, the incentive to have to create a video every week just to stay relevant in the algorithm. Whereas actually you might not want that as a content creator. It might not fit who you are or the type of content that you're making, but you're forced by, you know, the attention-driven algorithm to go that way. And so you start making content that you don't want to make.
That was the heartbreaking bit of the Patreon presentation. You said that's just for people listening. It's the inventor of Patreon, right? The founder tells the story of him being a musician, no one coming to his shows. Then he discovers YouTube and he just goes on this journey of getting some subscribers and more subscribers, and then starts a band with his wife, and the band grows and then thousands of people come to their shows. It's making tens of thousands of dollars, all because of the genius of the follow button. That changed everything. But when the ranking algorithm changed, it forced him to rethink his creative process. And that's the bit where it's like, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, exactly. And nowadays it's even worse than ranking, because now we have the concept of the For You feed, where the fact that I follow your show is meaningless because I'm just going to get whatever random content TikTok or Twitter or YouTube has decided is, worth my attention on that particular day. So yeah, the high level kind of takeaway from the video is it's become harder and harder for content creators to actually reach their audience in a way that's authentic to them without having to play the algorithm game. So I think he summarized the problem of the current state of social media really well. I think, and you could see he was conflicted. There was a point when he was talking about the conflict between the algorithmic feed versus the chronological feed. The one thing I think he missed is that if you move everybody over to something like Patreon, you do actually lose the reach, because if somebody on Patreon, shares a comment or adds value to the content in a way that it's going to benefit the rest of the audience, it's going to teach people that this content's worth listening to, that's just contained to Patreon. It's not allowed to spread and kind of influence other people. And so I think really what we need to move to is just removing the attention signal as the input to the algorithm and using a value signal instead, because then we can still have ranked feeds, but they're no longer driven by a metric that doesn't really align with the content creator and doesn't really align with the listener as well.
I wonder if that's what's caused the big change in music, because we were discussing last night music. I hold this very strong opinion that Danny
Which I disagree with.
We argue about this a lot. I think Amy Winehouse's Back to Black is the last great album ever made. Danny differs. He thinks
To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah,
I think that'll be a classic album.
Yeah, it's not. But anyway, so we argue about this. But I think the generic point is, when you look at, say, the top 50 albums of all time, or the top 100 albums of all time, generally, there's a lot of albums that were created from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, maybe some 2010s. It's really died off. And even the concept of a full album is dying. Although, I don't know, did you see the Billie Eilish announcement?
No.
So Billie Eilish's new album's coming out in a week. There's no singles being released beforehand. It's being released as an entire album in one go. And she's saying, listen to the whole album in its entirety, in the order it's meant to be listened to, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
But I don't know enough about Spotify and their discovery and whether it's essentially the same model as Twitter, TikTok. I don't know. I've got no idea on that. Do you know?
I don't know the inner workings of that algorithm, but I do know that it will be based on an engagement metric, which is essentially an attention metric. The amount of streams, the amount of time listened, all of these metrics that all of these platforms use are attention metrics.
And almost certainly Netflix is the same.
Yeah.
And I have a real issue with Netflix. A lot of it feels like a formula. And so there's some great series on Netflix, but there's been some good films. But sometimes when I'm watching the films, I feel like I'm watching a formula here. I feel like the studio has a formula for making this film. And if we're destroying creativity with algorithms, then I want us to completely reject algorithms.
Netflix have some really depressing ones too. They have things like how scrollable something is. So it's like, can you be on your phone while it's on and still keep track of like what you're watching? And then they also have like is it memeable? Because that's then really shareable on like social media. So if there's like meme templates yeah, exactly.
That is depressing.
It's really depressing.
Because we watched, like we talked about it, we watched Zone of Interest the other night. It's a subtitled film, so you can't have your phone on. You just have to put your phone down and watch it because you can't follow the film. That is depressing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, I don't know about you guys, but for me, some of the most interesting, insightful content out there on YouTube is not from some massive channel that releases a video every week. It's like a real hidden gem, and they're quite difficult to find. And it's because those creators don't play the algorithm game, and they are inherently limited in their reach. And I just think, it's a sad state of affairs where in order to be successful on social media, you need to kind of, play the algorithm game, capture people's attention, create the best clickbaity title. I think there's a way that we can move past that.
That's been something for us too, though. Like even on our videos on like YouTube, especially because that's obviously like the algorithm you really can game. Like we've rejected doing the
never played
YouTube
it.
thumbnails. I mean, sometimes we do a bit of a clickbait title, but we've rejected doing those like thumbnails, and that's probably to the detriment of like number of.
I don't know because if you look at our downloads per episode, compare it to other comparable shows in our industry, we do very well.
Yeah, I think the only fair comparison though would be to like test it and see if we got more.
But I think what we've tried to build is loyalty.
Yeah.
So you'll see it's just, when your show comes out, it would be a picture of you in front of a grey background with a little number in the corner, and that will pop up. And actually, in some ways, I think they pop out compared to all the weird stuff. But we've rejected that game. We've rejected playing that game because I think it's a loser mentality.
It's high time preference.
High time preference.
Yeah.
What we want is someone to know, it's a What Bitcoin Did show. I know the kind of questions Pete's going to ask. I know the contribution Danny's going to make. I know what the guests are going to be about. I trust that, because this fluctuating YouTube audience is not really useful to us. But even with the titles, we want a title someone comes to the show, but not unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Like we've had a couple of like Bitcoins going to like Samson Mao, Bitcoin's £1 million.
Case for $1 million Bitcoin,
yeah, case for money. But in fairness, that is
his theory.
That is his theory at the moment. But yesterday, I was like, I think that title was. It was funny. We had the Alex Gladstein one, and Daddy was like, "Ultimate Bitcoin use cases." I was like, "That's way too baity. That's not something even Alex Gladstein would say. Let's not do that." He was like, "That's the title of his presentation." I was like, "Okay, we can go with it." But I don't want to play that game.
How do you guys think about, measuring the success of each episode separate to just the download numbers or the view numbers?
Good question.
Well, I record a lot of stats. Every single month, we look at downloads via I should probably get this. Where's my? Oh, it's in the fucking car. Could you have access to it?
Yeah. Do we want to bring it up now though?
Yeah.
You talk about it and I'll see if it's
okay.
useful.
So every single month, at the end of the month, I have a number of spreadsheets, and I have a month. I have audio listens, YouTube, Rumble, SoundCloud, which is negligible, and then I have a total. So that's the total number, and it starts. I don't look at anything else. Yeah, there you go. So there, and so I know month on month, what we're doing, and then we look at downloads per day. I do a rolling 60-a-day average. What's that one? I can't even read that. What's it say?
What are you looking at?
Does that say audition interviews?
Yeah.
Oh, that should be audio interviews,
Yeah.
video interviews, and then I have a audio to video ratio, and that allows us to just keep an eye on. So this is our total as a graph. Then we track audio versus video. You can see that big spike with a massive YouTube video. I actually hate that because like you see all these graphs now, they're out of kilter, and ours is a business. Then we do it by year, and then I do it individually by show, right?
And so you're looking at the download number.
Yeah. So for me, it's what we want to do is have a show that grows and reaches more people, but retains a loyal audience. That's the most important thing. Because like I said, I was at dinner last night. I said, we tend to do between 1 and 1.5 million a month across video and audio. If a sponsor turned and said, look, Pete, we want the numbers to be up, I can tell you I can get 2 million next month. I could get 3 million next month. I could double our highest month ever. I know the 13 guests to get. I know the topics to make. But maintaining that's really difficult.
That's like growth or cost, which is not what we're about.
So what we actually say is our goal is for the year is X number of downloads, which say it's, 15 million. So we want to do like 1.2 million a month. Okay, we make sure we get a few bangers in there. We try and get Jack Dorsey. We'll have a couple of sailors and some lid orders. We'll try and get, there's a number of people who kind of do the mid-range, which might be a Nick Carter or a Gladstein, American Hodl. And then the rest is all our luxuries where we try and bring in people that we've not spoken to before, or we think we can help, or, like we had a guy yesterday, did his first ever podcast interview. It's not going to do great because nobody knows who he is, but he's got this really interesting theory regarding Bitcoin as a systems engineer. And so we're not just trying to maximize downloads for revenue. We're trying to long-term grow a useful product that people come back to and trust. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think...
Sorry, just to throw in, so those download numbers, the reason we track everything is so we can try and hit a target each month to give us the luxury to do the shows we really want to do. Because it's still a business, so we've got to hit a certain number for revenue, and then we can play with the luxury.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think... what I would love to see, not just in Fountain, but in all of these social media apps, is a way for you to actually measure how well those luxury episodes, if that's the word you use, how well they're doing in terms of your ultimate goal of building loyalty over the years. Because it may be that in a given month, you have 10 of those episodes. And how do you know which one was kind of truly valuable to people and made them think, wow, this is a show that actually doesn't just give me, the really popular guests, but gives me some unique insight that I'm going to take with me over the years. I imagine it's quite difficult for you to understand that insight from all of your audience. I mean, I'm sure you get emails and feedback in other ways. But
yeah, so email's really interesting. Certain shows will get loads of emails, like the mechanic show we did recently, a lot of emails, positive and negative, with strong opinions, but it's more wanting to discuss the idea. I think the biggest signal for how good and interesting a show is how many times clips are created and put onto Twitter. We're not tracking that. We're not measuring it. But you see with certain shows, it's like there's a lot, like the Shinobi one.
Yeah, conversation starts around it.
Yeah. And so that's a really interesting measurement for us. But it's an interesting business because most businesses out there, it's maximize sales, maximize revenue. So if it's, I don't know, if I've got my bar, I want my bar as full as it can be and sell as much drink as possible to drive a profit. This doesn't work like that because if you stress and sweat the asset, you destroy your relationship with the audience, so you destroy the product. And I've seen other podcasts do that. Yeah, I've seen them do that. So it's a careful balance for longevity.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the clips on Twitter, was it?
Yes.
That do really well, and that's one of the things you look at. Fountain actually started, the very first version of Fountain, which was just a side project that I built at the beginning of 2021, was all based around clipping, and that's still a big part of the app. So you can create clips of episodes, share them within Fountain, build playlists of them, and share them externally on social media. Because another big thing that we believe is that most podcasters will, when they release a new episode, they'll do a clip themselves and they'll share that on all of the socials.
Yeah, we do.
And our kind of thesis on this is that it's actually your audience that are best placed to find those clips and share them within their own networks, because the moment of the episode that you think is the best moment to share, or Danny thinks is the best moment to share, or I found most interesting for whatever reason, they're probably all different, but they probably all work really well in their own context, in their own kind of social graphs, in their own networks. So yeah, I think this kind of concept of allowing your audience to help grow your show through tools like clipping is another really exciting thing we're doing. Also, because we have micropayments in the form of the Lightning Network, we can do really cool things with these kind of features. So on Fountain, when you create clips, people can like those clips, and every like is a paid like with sats, similar to how Zaps work on Nostr. So your audience can actually start earning from some sats just by helping you grow your show. And you can incentivize that if you want to, go in and like the best clips. But yeah, I think it all comes down to this value signal that we're measuring and then using that to drive discovery.
I think, look, ultimately, if we could replace sponsorships with streaming stats and value for value, I mean, that would be amazing. Having sponsors comes with so many issues. It comes with, I've mentioned it earlier, complaints. What if one goes into administration, people lose money, aka BlockFi? You have a reputational issue. There's a lot of vetting. There's due diligence you have to do. It can be a minefield. Obviously, it's a model that's really driven the podcast industry. And obviously, you believe in value for value, and I'm saying, well, it's a negligible amount at the moment. But if there's a 10x on that, or 100x on that, that becomes something that can swap out the advertising model. It could kill the advertising model.
Yeah, and I think it has a chance to, but I'm not naive about the fact that this is not around the corner. You know, this is going to take.
Early.
We're still very early. That classic phrase.
Yeah.
But I think it has a chance to, and I guess I would encourage you to maybe just experiment and see. You know, just ask your audience. Say, hey guys, we're doing an experiment this episode. Send in what you think this show's worth to you. A great way to do it is with analogies of time. You know, how much time have you spent listening to this show over the past year, and how much is that worth to you? I'd love to know. I'd love you to send me some stats to show me how much you value the show. And if you did an experiment like that, you know, who knows what you'd see, but I'm pretty sure you'd see a massive increase. And then you can start to have some more information about, okay, how can we turn this into a more kind of repeatable process. But you do have shows. I mean, Adam Curry with his show No Agenda, they don't have any ads, they don't have any sponsorship, and you know, they support themselves and their family from just the shows twice a week.
The download stats, can we track them from InFountain? Do we know how many?
You can, if you're on Spotify, you should be able to see the Fountain percentage there, yeah.
On Spotify?
Or if you're
Libsyn,
Spotify you're on Libsyn.
So they'll still come through because they're still like RSS downloads, so you'll still see them.
Is there any way of quickly seeing that, just out of interest?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Well, because the point isn't what the percentage is so much. It's the fact that we'll be given a message that's going out to 50 to 100,000 people, but only whatever percentage is listened to on Fountain.
And then only a certain percent of that are actually going to support you, because the way it works is not
everybody. The
everybody.
ask is good for you though as well, because it hopefully shifts people to Fountain.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, we're still early with Fountain, but you know, it's a fully functional podcast app, great design.
So 83,000 downloads.
Over what period?
That's a good point. I didn't change that.
Is it the default? That's 3 months.
Yeah, let me make it forever though.
So that's 80,000 out of 1.5 million. Yeah, that's fine. Just because you want to know about.
Yeah,
that's
fair.
So, that's about 5. What's that? 5%ish.
5%.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you've taken 5% in that amount of time.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, people like using Fountain not just because they want to support shows. They like using Fountain because there's community on there, and they discover great content that they don't necessarily subscribe to the shows. Like, there's plenty of shows out there that I'm not interested in enough to actually go and press subscribe in the app and have new episodes come every week. But that doesn't mean that once in a while, every couple of months, then there won't be an episode that like is totally the type of thing I want to listen to. And because of the social features we have in the app, you can kind of see that and you can discover new things. So that's probably the main reason why people use Fountain.
I think to use Fountain, you have to become my podcasting app. Do you cover, like, will you have everything that Spotify pretty much has?
Yeah, we've got all of the podcasts. So
and I saw that I can import.
Yeah, you can import from Spotify. And we finally have Joe Rogan back as well after he stopped being exclusive with Spotify. And I think that's another interesting thing to talk about, which is, you know,
why did they end the exclusive?
Because it wasn't working for him.
Yeah.
You know, he got
$200 million contracts.
I know, but look at the amount of, you know, you talked about this, the contrast between the monetary goals that you have for the podcast as a business and the long-term loyalty that you want to build.
Yeah.
The fact that he went exclusive massively reduced his reach. You know, before he went exclusive, he was without a doubt the number one podcast in the world. Whereas over the past couple of years, you've seen people like Lex Friedman kind of step into that role. And that's because Spotify only have a 30% market share. So he was just saying, okay, 70% of the world, you can no longer listen to my content. It can't be shared. It can't be commented on YouTube.
He was getting like tens of millions of downloads on YouTube, and that's just gone overnight. It's huge.
Yeah. So I think that, they've renewed his deal, obviously, because it's the headline one. But I think a big part of that would have been, you know, he was losing his reach and his influence and his audience, which he cares about as well as the money.
Hold on, if they've not got him exclusive, why are they paying for it? Because he'll be on there anyway.
I think that I don't know all of the details, but I think they have an advertising deal. So
they get to sell the ads.
They get to sell the ads not just on Spotify, but also on all the other podcast apps. Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if that deal will renew again after that. I wonder if it's worth it because you're paying for the exclusivity. If you're not getting the exclusivity, then you have to sell the ads. And so they're going to have to sell $200 million of ads. And that means they've become an ad sales platform.
Well, they already kind of are. They've bought so many of the of those like ad sales and hosting sites. But to get, like, say they take a 10% cut, they've got to sell a hell of a lot of ads to make the money back.
Yeah. There's a UX reason to stay with Spotify, but there's a being a Bitcoiner and supporting the Bitcoin community reason to move to Fountain. So I'm definitely going to have a play with that and go to it because, we would obviously want to support you and help you guys. I like the idea of pushing people to use Fountain.
Yep.
So yeah, we'd obviously want to do that. So let's think about. I don't like asking for money though.
That's the very British thing, isn't it?
well, but it's a very British thing. But people know this is a business. We're not like a startup podcast. We're established, and I don't mean that as a flex or anything. But just people like, why are you asking us for money?
But I think there's a funny thing with that. Sorry,
I think we'd have to give that away.
But so we've got a Patreon and we have like a higher tier Patreon where we like jump on a call with them every month and that kind of thing. And so many of them have been like, because there's times where we're busy and I'm like not on the Discord, not talking to people. And I like almost apologize. It's like,
we're shit at it.
Yeah. But they're like, no, we just want to support you. Like that's what it comes down to. Like these people do want to support regardless.
Yeah, 100%. And also this is valuable to the listener as well, because, people want to connect with you and they also want to show their appreciation to you for all of the amazing content that you've put out there over the years. And so you don't have to frame the ask just about, hey, send me money. It's more about, show me what you found valuable. Like, what was the top episode over the past 2 years that you found most interesting? Send that episode a boost so I can start to piece together what content you're finding most enjoyable.
That might not be the right signal sometimes, though. It might not be one statistically significant, but secondly, that might actually just be hardcore Bitcoiners telling us what they want. They might be like, I want Mechanic, I want Shinobi, but at we're a show we like to be the top of the funnel. If you've just discovered Bitcoin, we're helpful to you. They might need something else or something different. So for us, I get it. And also, if we do ask for sats, I think mine just go to open sats because I wouldn't want to be asking. I hate asking.
How can we within Fountain give back to the audience as well? How does it work the other way?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. The main one is every comment in the app you can like, and you can set your like value to as many sats as you want. So you could set it to 1,000 sats, 5,000 sats, whatever. And then when you see those boosts come in, you can just hit like and send sats back to your audience.
Yep.
That's the main way.
Are we not just buying likes there?
Buying likes?
Well, their boost may be higher than the like, so it might just be a way of giving it a token of appreciation more than a...
Yeah, and the likes don't affect any of the ranking. That's just a payment from you back to the person that sent that.
I actually think, I think for us, a more passive model is going to be much more beneficial than one where we have to interact because it just doesn't suit us and what we do. But I also think for you guys, and tell me if I'm overstepping the mark here, but I think as you grow and expand, get to bigger and bigger podcasts, the passive model will suit a lot of other podcasters as well. That interactive model, I think, is it's a lot more early day. It's like the newer podcasters establishing themselves, wanting to. But I think a more passive model. But that you're small, you're going to scale and hopefully get a lot bigger. And maybe that's something that would be part of that.
Yeah, I think the other thing is the interactivity doesn't have to be integrated with the actual show audio. It can be just within the app. So you can reply to every boost and every comment in the app as well. So you can just say, thanks so much for this.
But so the reason I'm pushing back is I want to be helpful, but that's just another thing to do. Do you know what I mean? It's that's another thing. I get it with those who, because what's that thing? Whatever. Do you know the Whatever guy?
No.
You've never seen the Whatever podcast? It's a guy, you will have seen it on Twitter. It's a guy who's in a studio, usually with a bunch of girls, they may be OnlyFans or whatever, and they're asking challenging questions about dating.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen clips of that. Yeah.
So I went to watch his podcast once, and I realized I was never going to watch it because it's 6 hours long. But it's a 6-hour YouTube where people are doing boosts and asking questions and sending money. And, he gets a lot come in. That's why it's 6 hours long. I think there's probably different types of creators. There are some who are entirely generating their revenue from that interaction. And so they've built a model around being interactive. We've built a model around being a passive experience. So I just think there's different models for different people. I'm really interested long-term what the plan is for this, because you're tied to Bitcoin at the moment. And yes, people will maybe buy some sats and stream it, but we all think the future will be a hyper-Bitcoinized world. We do think the advertising model will eventually die. You have probably a stronger belief than I that we're going to a value for value model. So what's the big picture here? Where do you think you can get to with this?
So I think there's two stages. The first is solving the onboarding problem to Bitcoin. Like, that is our biggest issue today, because for a brand new listener or podcaster discovering Fountain, they like the idea behind it, but just the process of educating yourself about Bitcoin, educating yourself about Lightning, figuring out how to get your first sats on the Lightning network, figuring out an invoice. What is an invoice? How do I send sats from Cash App into Fountain? That is the biggest challenge. And until we make the UX of that onboarding flow more smooth, then we're always going to have an artificial barrier to how far we can go. I think that will get better, and it is kind of dependent on partners like Cash App and Strike really kind of dialing in their onboarding, and also other, traditional finance apps like in the UK offering Lightning support. I think in the long term, though, we can compete against Spotify and Apple, both on the podcasting side and also the music side, because I think there's just some fundamentals that listeners understand. The first is that they understand how meaningful this content is to them, whether it's a podcast or an artist or a song. They understand that, and they do want to give back once they understand that they can in an easy way. And then the second thing is, just compared to the For You pages of these other social apps, people are kind of tired of that. That's why people love podcasting so much, because it's a long form, in-depth conversation that doesn't kind of drag you this way and that based on the attention measure. So I think if we can nail the onboarding and also build discovery tools that enable you to find the best content and then support it and then build that kind of feedback loop, then we can compete with the likes of Spotify. But obviously it's going to take, many years, but we're up for it.
Have you looked at all at like bringing audiobooks in? Because that's somewhere where I waste so much money. The amount of books I buy on Audible thinking I'm going to listen to that, I'll like use a credit or buy it or whatever, and then it just sits there and never fucking listen to it. We
actually have audiobooks already in beta right now. We're probably not going to launch the audiobooks feature.
And do you get how does that work? Do you get like the full catalog, or do you get like a partial catalog of books?
Yes.
Do the pages open as you stream them?
Not yet.
Because that would be an interesting model, that you pay like 1 sat per page or so, or 10 sats per page. And
the real challenge here with the more established industries that already have a kind of rights management setup in place, think music or audiobooks, is that you have to work with the big publishers in order to get the full catalog. It's okay to kind of approach independent, whether it's authors or musicians, get them to upload their content to an RSS feed and push them towards value for value. But the big publishers are not going to go for that. So you actually need to work with the publishers. We're working with some distributors right now, but what we want to do is to be able to launch with the full catalog of audiobooks. One of the cool things we're hoping to do is actually lower the cost of purchasing those audiobooks as well, because obviously when you buy an audiobook on Audible, if you're not using the credit system, you have to pay the Apple tax. So it really pushes up the price of each book. And we're hoping that with Lightning, we can kind of sidestep that. But yeah, I think audiobooks is another example whereby the price is kind of set by the publishers and it's quite low, but the value we get from books and audiobooks is way higher than the $8.99 that you might pay for that audiobook. And again, there's no signal that you enjoyed that book and that's shared back to your follower graph. There's no signal. You might leave a review on Amazon, but when I'm in Audible looking for an audiobook, I can't see any reviews from the people I follow. And again, the signal is limited to the attention signal that they use for their charts. So yeah, audiobooks hopefully launching maybe 2 or 3 months from now.
But even within the world of Bitcoiners, there are people who are self-publishing.
Yeah.
And maybe can do the audiobook themselves. And maybe they've got a direct route to market with your platform to be able to just send the book immediately, people to contribute immediately back. So
Yeah.
I see how you're like shifting the model, and I guess you're just an early player taking the majority of the market share of people who are in the Bitcoin mind space. And as the Bitcoin mind space grows, you grow with it. It's a bit like our podcast. We're only ever as big as Bitcoin. We're not breaking out of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin, that download chart I showed you, you can map that to the Bitcoin price. It completely reflects it. And so it's not the worst place to be.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. And luckily, Bitcoiners are incredibly passionate and helpful. So we've had an incredible amount of early support from the Bitcoin community. I think, as I said before, we are breaking out of the Bitcoin space. We have, the top podcast most weeks is a show called Linux Unplugged, which has nothing to do with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And
even No Agenda, like I know Adam Curry's a Bitcoiner, but it's not like a Bitcoin show.
Yeah, they don't really talk about Bitcoin that much. And
we get in the top 10 sometimes, don't we?
You do, yeah, without even asking.
Us.
So
we're number 11 at the moment with Gladstein.
Yeah, because I see you tag us sometimes. That's the way I always see it. What's the highest we've ever been? Have we ever had a number one?
I don't know. As a show, we're 6 at the moment as a show.
Oh, really? Behind who?
So No Agenda's top, Linux Unplugged, the Side Stream Music Podcast. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so that's one of the music podcasts where they will play different tracks and you can boost the artist directly.
Yeah. Over what period is that?
I don't actually know.
7 days.
Okay.
So we're above Odell.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
And then like Daniel Prince, Podcast 2.0, so another Adam Curry.
But I like seeing Daniel Prince above us because I think this suits him and what he's doing. His isn't a business like ours. I don't want to speak for him. He might say, "Fuck you, Pete." I think entirely different. But I imagine with him, it actually is more about. It's a nice supplementary income stream side gig to his life, and it suits him being a little bit more embedded within the Bitcoin community. But I want to see him. I don't want us to be too high there.
I do.
You're so greedy.
Well, I think the way to think about this is, again, you care about loyalty of your audience and delivering value to them, and the social payment-driven feeds that we have on Fountain is a way for your audience to kind of get deeper into the What Bitcoin Did back catalog as well. So, for example, your new listeners that have maybe arrived in the past month or 3 months, are they really going to go back and listen to the entire back catalog of hundreds of episodes? Probably not. But there probably are some episodes in the back catalog that they find incredibly valuable. And so tying the payments to each episode is a great way for them to actually discover the back catalog as well. And that's not about income for you. That's about making it easier for your audience to, once they discover your show through one episode, to kind of explore it in a way that's not really possible on...
You get this psycho behavior. They just work backwards and...
You'll get some people doing that.
And they do. They go all the way backwards. Sometimes you see it on SoundCloud. It's really interesting because you look at the stats and most weeks a lot of the shows don't go up. And then one week, every show's gone up one, at minimum of one. You're like, some psycho's gone through and got every episode. But you do get that behavior, especially the bull markets. They've discovered this new thing, Bitcoin. Oh my God, it's going to change my life. It's the best thing ever. I want to know everything I can possibly know about it. And they go back through the old catalog. We have an issue with the back catalog on Apple. Is it Apple?
Yeah, we're going to change that though. That is being fixed.
I've been saying that for 2 years, man.
I know, I have. But that'll be fixed by the time this episode goes
The
out.
amount of multi-year conversations and things we haven't done is insane.
Yeah, I guess I would just encourage people to think about, what's actually going on when they're using these social platforms like YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and think about the value that the content that you listen to provides. And, we want to move to a world where content creators are only using the value signal to actually inform what content they're creating. And if you want to kind of help us along that journey, then
Yeah, how do we help you?
Give Fountain a try. You can download Fountain, you can import from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and just let us know what you like, what you don't like.
Let's do some shout outs in the intros. Next couple of weeks, let's just because we've been obviously pimping the conference in the intro. Once the conference is over, let's just pimp this a bit.
Cool.
Give it a boost. I'm not going to ask people to send us sats, but I will ask them to download or try and listen to the show and on Fountain, and I'll import my Spotify and have a play with it, because I think we really want you to be successful. We think you're doing a good job for Bitcoin. How you finance it? Are you funded?
Yeah, so we do have a small amount of funding, but we're still a very small team.
Yeah.
With three full-time,
that's mad,
and two part-time as well. So yeah, it's a lot to do. It's a challenge to compete with Spotify on
with
a
three
feature
people.
set, design, UX. It is a challenge with a small team.
Are you going to raise again?
No plans to right now. We've got a good amount of runway, and we believe that we can kind of get to that next stage once we.
Is your runway in Bitcoin?
Some of it is, yeah.
Bitcoin,
which is beneficial for us. But also, a lot of our revenue is in Bitcoin as well, because people buy the promotions in Bitcoin, and then we just store that on the balance sheet. But yeah, we've got a lot still to do. But our 1.0 release came out last December, and that was a real milestone for us, because the app finally feels, from a design and UX perspective, like it can compete with Spotify and Apple. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone to check it out. And also, the good thing about us being a small team is if there's something that frustrates you about Spotify or Apple, something you want to see from your podcast app, we can do that for you. So yeah, just reach out, and happy to try and build what you want.
When we had our own show, our other show, Defiance, there was one of the platforms. What was it called? Castbox, I think, or one of them, where for every category you could pay to sit at the top of the list for a week. And it was a really good way of promoting a show early on. Really good way. I don't know if you thought about that.
Well, so we do actually have this feature, and it works kind of in the opposite way of the streaming sat. So what you can actually do is buy a promotion for your show or for a specific episode, and you can flip the money streaming in the opposite direction. So you can choose to pay your audience 500 sats for listening to the episode, or 50 sats for listening to the episode. So we have that promotion feature, and it's working pretty well.
We should try that.
Yeah, that'd be cool when we get those shows that we think are important but won't necessarily do very well.
Let's do it. Let's do it with
or the back catalogue as well.
Yeah,
let's do it with Nick. Let's give him a boost.
Cool.
Yeah. Send some info on that. We'll try that out as well. Where do you want people to go?
You can go to fountain.fm and find all the info, or you can just search Fountain Podcasts in the App Store or on Android.
Well, listen, I hope all the success for you guys, and stay in touch with me and Danny. Anything we can do, just let us know. We really want this to work. I haven't spent enough time in it, but I'm now intrigued enough to, over the next couple of weeks, I will. And those sats that our team have received and the ones that have gone to OpenSats, that's very cool. It's not a small amount of Bitcoin, and so yeah, very cool.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
Thank you.